Hey book bitches. Betches, not bitches. Hey book bitches, it's your girl Erica. I am here to talk to you guys today about Badlands, which is book 4 in the series Savage Lands by Stacey Marie Brown. Let me start this bitch off. Savage Lands is fucking awesome. Ma'am. I haven't been this excited about a series in a really long time. We are talking like top tier shit. Top tier. We're talking Akashar. We're talking Throne of Glass. We are talking Cressley Cole, Immortals After Dark. We're talking top tier boyfriend. We're talking top tier fantasy. We're talking top tier romance. We're talking, bold statement. This might be a very bold statement. We're talking possibly one of the best, if not the best, enemies to lovers I've ever read. Every fucking reel I see is enemies to lovers, like Knife Kings, and I'm like, what books are you reading? Like enemies to lovers, and then you go and read some bullshit book. Read Savage Lands. That's your enemies to lovers. The beginning of this video is going to go over Savage Lands, and then at the end, I'm going to go over specifically Badlands, okay? So, Savage Lands. Here's what happened. I bought Savage Lands, and I was like, I'm going to read it. And then I never did. I was like, all right, I bought it, so I have to read it. And it just sat in my Kindle library for a very long time. And I was like, everyone talks about this book and they all love it. It's rated really high. It has like almost 5,000 reviews. Like, this book must be good. So I was like, all right, I'm just gonna do it. I'm just gonna read it. Like, let's do this thing. So on my honeymoon, I was like, I had a list of books that I wanted to read on the plane ride over. Savage Lands was at the top of that list. I ended up reading not what I had planned, but I did end up reading Savage Lands. But the book is based in post-apocalyptic kind of Hungary, and my husband his father is actually an immigrant from Hungary. It's actually a really crazy story. So one of the characters' last name is Bakos, which is now my new last name, which is kind of weird that I chose to read this like on my trip to my honeymoon when I finally like have my new last name. And I've had this book on my list for like 6 months now. But yeah, Bakos is actually a very common last name. It's like a Williams or a Smith in Hungary. So it's not that crazy that like name was used in conjunction with Hungary. What is kind of crazy is that John's father is an immigrant from Hungary. Actually had polio as a child, and they escaped communist Hungary to get the vaccine. They stayed in several like refugee camps throughout Europe until they finally made it to America, where they ended up staying in Bronx, New York. That's a pretty crazy story. Strange ties to Hungary for this Boston-born Italian. So basically it's based in Budapest, and one side is the humans, the other side is like the Fae. And what ended up happening is the wall between the humans and the Fae collapsed, and the two worlds integrated, and then there became a race war. So that is pretty much primarily what the whole series is about, is this race war. And Brexley is the main female character. She thinks she's human, she's not. Basically, she fights for the humans for a while, and then she gets captured, she becomes a prisoner, and pretty much most of the book is based in the prison. And so when I first started reading the book, I was like, you get introduced to her and this other guy that like, they grew up together, they're in love with each other, they haven't told each other. Very much like Katniss Gale vibes, like very, very heavy Katniss Gale vibes. And I was like, okay, I feel you. And I was like, who's the PETA? Like, I know there's gonna be a PETA. I was like, maybe it's a love triangle. Like, let's get into it, baby. And you kind of immediately know, I think you always know who like the main love interest kind of is for the most part, unless you're a Sarah J. Maas fan, and then you never fucking know. I have my, like, I need something to play with my hands, so this is what I'm playing with. So you kind of, like, know who it is in the prison once she gets into prison, and then there's this, all the prison politics and this, that, and the other thing. She's learning what's actually really going on.
she, you know, obviously she was super sheltered. You know, the humans are actually kind of bad, like blah, blah, blah. This whole, you know, song and dance. And the prison is fucking crazy. The prison is terrible. Crazy living conditions. She makes friends. She doesn't make friends. Like XYZ. It's hard to explain. The second that you meet Warwick, you know he's the main love interest. So then you meet Warwick, and Warwick is literally a savage. Like, Warwick is... I don't even know how to describe him. So like, we're used to the Rhysans and the Rowans and the Hunts and, you know, all the nice guys, even fucking Cardan. Like, we're used to like such fluffy main male characters, and Warwick is an asshole. You know, he's kind of been fucked over, but he's a bad guy. Like, he's not... There's no like fluff around him. There's no like redeeming qualities. As of right now, you don't really, like, he's truly just like a fucking piece of shit asshole. And he kills people, and there's no light to his dark. Everyone is just kind of like drawn to Brexley, and including him. So the whole series is them, and they fucking hate each other. And this is what I mean when I tell you this is one of the best enemies to lovers I've ever read. These two characters have so much sexual tension, and they have so much, like, they have like a mental connection. I sound like a crazy person. I feel like I'm ranting. They have a mental connection where they like can kind of like transport themselves to where the other one is. It's described better than I'm describing it. It makes a lot more sense. She can feel him touching her even though he's not there. So they like tease each other a lot and very sexually tease each other. And then they like don't do it in person. So like all of the sexual tension is kind of like in these like astral projections. I think that's the best way to say it. So they're kind of like astral projecting all of their sexual tension for the first 2.5 books. 2.5 books. I'm telling you, it is... Usually when that happens, when it's super drawn out, I'm pulling my hair out. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, let's just have them fuck already. Like, come the fuck on. And the whole time that I'm reading these books, that thought did not even cross my mind. Because Stacey did such a good job of like giving. It was like... I was always satisfied with the amount of sexual tension versus the amount of hatred versus the amount of like, not love, but like affection that was being portrayed. And like, if you read it, you'll get it, because he just like, he yells for her and he tries to save her a lot. And like, you can tell he like cares about her, but like, it's so hard for him to show that, you know, and there's like a lot of betrayals. There's a lot of like, there's just a lot going on. These books I would describe as action-packed cover to cover. They're a little bit intimidating just because they're in like the 400 to 500 page range, but they read so quick, like insanely quick. And it's because there's so much action. There is no downtime. There is no fluff. There is no like bullshit scenes that like don't really fucking matter. Throne of Glass, to me, there was a lot of bullshit scenes. There was a lot of like, especially the Manon chapters. Like there was just a lot of the Aiden chapters. Like there was a lot of chapters in those books that I was like, are we really fucking doing this, Sarah? Like, come on. In Savage Lands, especially the first 4 books, which are the ones, I mean, the 4th one's coming out, but especially the first 3 books, like there's just so much action. You cannot be tired. There's no like downtime. There is some comedy in it though. I think like Stacey just did like a fantastic job of adding like just enough like laughs and stuff in there. And that leads me to my next point. The characters are awesome. Like fucking awesome. As I was reading Savage Lands, I was comparing it initially to Hunger Games because I was like, oh, it's a Peeta Gale like situation. Absolutely fucking nothing like that. Take that out of your head. It's more like Throne of Glass. And I say that because there's just a ton of characters. There's a ton of like side stories. You don't necessarily follow those side stories, but you are heavily involved in the characters and their relationships. The characters are just like, they're funny. There's so many different ones, and they're funny, and you care about them. And like Stacey just made you give a shit about all of them. She integrated their relationships with Brexley so well that like it's not overwhelmingly Warwick in her. You know what I mean? Like it's not a love story. The story is about so many other things. The love story is on the side for me, and it helps move the story along and it keeps it interesting, but the story is not Brexley and Warwick. It's so many other things, so many other people, so many other like scenarios. I do want to bring this up because I think it's really important, and I think it's done well. There is LGBTQ plus representation in this book, and I think it's done very delicately where it's not like in your face. It's not obvious. It's not like forced. There is a character that's trans. And I think, and especially in Badlands, Stacey did a really good job. Oh, I don't want to give anything away. I don't know how to say this. There's a passage in the 4th book in Badlands that's soon to come out where the trans character is being degraded by being forced to be their original born gender. It's just done so delicately, and it really, to me, the passage took a jab at anti-trans people of being like, yeah, and this is how you're making them feel by doing this. And I was like, fuck yeah, like that's exactly what it is. And it was very passive, and it was only a couple lines. It wasn't like this big diatribe, like it wasn't this like forced narrative. It was very like passive, and it just like made sense for that scene. It made sense for that character. And I really just appreciated their presence in this story, because I do think that the more visibility that we have with LGBTQ plus members and characters, the better. But we all complain about like sometimes it does feel forced, sometimes it doesn't feel natural, sometimes it doesn't feel like organic for the story, and it just feels like they're adding it to add it. In this case, I don't feel that way. There is also another character that is gay, and he joins in on a threesome, which is saucy and fun. And like there's moments where that like there's banter between them, and there's banter about being gay, and it's just very normalized in the scenarios, and it doesn't feel like it's forced. It just feels like it's another person, and like their sexual orientation doesn't actually matter to the character. It's just part, like it's just like a side, you know, conversation like it would be in real life. I wanted to make sure to talk about that because I felt it was very tastefully done. I'm gonna go into some of the characters. Brexley, I kind of see a lot of Aelin in Brexley. And like I said, I see Throne of Glass in this series a lot. I see Brexley as like trying to do what's right, and she's trying to like help people and save people, and she's doing it at the cost of her own welfare. And that's just kind of like a very Aelin thing to do. She's a little bit stubborn, she's a little bit obstinate, like it's just, it has that same vibes. Warwick is kind of like unlike anyone I've ever encountered. He's very gruff, he's very mean, he's very cold. He saves her a lot. And that's one other thing I did want to bring up in this story. I don't have any criticisms of these books. I gave all 4 of these books 5 stars, which is unheard of. Even the Akratar series that I love above all else, I gave the first book a 4. So yeah, the one thing, it's not even negative. It's because I like it. I personally like it in books. It's something that I know other people don't particularly like sometimes. Is there's a lot of male saves female. There's a lot of rescuing, if you will. Yeah, there is a good amount of rescuing in these books because there's just so much action and there's so much going on. It's just like kind of natural for them to get taken captive and XYZ. So I don't know. I personally like it in books, so like I didn't mind it. I actually really liked it, but I do know that that is something that I've heard people don't necessarily enjoy. But that would be my one like little notable mention. Let's go into Badlands. So Badlands was awesome. I would say the 3rd book is the steamiest book, and that's because there's just more sex in general. They finally like get it on. And the fourth book, they definitely do have sex, but it's not as often. Their connection is impacted at some point. They're not able to do what they did in the previous books, which was like feel each other and like astral project to each other. There is a reason for that, but I'm not gonna get into that. They can't astral project where they are right now. I don't want to say too much about it, but there just isn't as much sex in this book. But the romance is dialed up. And there's like a lot of moments where I'm just like, I don't know how to describe it, but like I like those like romantic moments, or not romance moments, but like those like dialogues where like your gut clenches and you're just like, fuck, like, oh, it's so sweet, or like, oh, I feel so bad for them, oh, like I feel their pain, like soaking up the empathy in the words. And there's just a lot of moments of that, and it's not always necessarily with these two characters, which is so good that like you can still feel that romance while she's talking to other people, or he's talking to other people. It's kind of crazy. The humor is there. There's two little characters, Bitsy and Opie, that like fucking kill me, and they still are slaying it in book 4. Like, so funny. They're just like great comic relief. They're great little characters. They provide comedic relief, and they provide a little bit of reprieve from all the action. There's a ton of action in these books, and book 4 is action fucking packed. Cover to cover is just like bomb, 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 there, we're there. And I just think it's like, I really like this book. I liked where it went. I like where it's going. I'm so excited for book 5, and I am devastated that it's going to take over a year to get here. But yeah, the Badlands it was great. Like, it furthered the storyline along. It really solidified the two main characters where they are in their romance, and you are finally like we're kind of like at the crescendo of like this whole thing, and we're just like, all these characters have finally converged, all the storylines have finally converged, and now we're like we're in the end. We're in season 7 of Game of Thrones right now. Like, that's where we ended up. We're like, Jon Snow finally meets Dany and they have sex, and like, where are we at now? Like, what's going on with the dragons? What's going on with the Night King? Like, let's go. Book 5, I just can't even imagine. I think this book is gonna blow my fucking brains out. I definitely highly recommend in the Savage Land series. And if you guys have read it, comment below, tell me what your thoughts were. We're gonna have Stacey on the podcast, which is so fucking awesome. All right, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed my review of Savage Lands. Put it on your Goodreads list. Do yourself a favor. It's literally probably the best series I've read in a long time. All right.